Hi, my name is Mimi Weich, and I'm an artist honored to be a part of the Waltz show. I've had my own journey through mental illness, and so this organization has a special place in my heart with its emphasis on reducing the stigma associated with mental illness and raising awareness. My sculptural pieces explore the emotions that we all share on this human journey: fear, grief, happiness, depression, anxiety, joy. I hope you'll come see it. Thanks.
Whenever we even talk about things like mental illness issues, it's a real problem. And frankly, I have to say, thank goodness for art, because it provides a space for that.
The core concept of the performing arts and the fine arts are so critical, very critical, because my experience had shown that it becomes a validation of expression for students, when they have certain skill sets or having an outlet of their emotions is what I have found the arts to be, whether it's visual or performing arts. It allows students to express themselves in a variety of different ways. Plus, it validates who they are.
Music, for me, artificial music has the best way to improve people's life in society. That's how I define music. Because I noticed that when you're suffering from trauma, if you just listen to a music, obviously you become healed.
We've become a society that values rational thought sometimes over the affective or emotional side of things. And while we don't want to be guided in our decisions on pure emotion, we do want to be guided and understand that we were created with that emotional side of us. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's something that can be quite helpful if we have those connections. And what better way to try to foster those connections than through the arts?
I just think that we all crave connection, we all crave expression, and it's not a surprise that I haven't always been creative or expressive in life, because I haven't always been in touch with what I was feeling in the first place. I was very disconnected from self. So if I'm disconnected from self, if I'm numbing or I'm ignoring what I'm feeling, then how can I be creative? Exactly. How can I express?
A lot of artists were, sort of strapped to their houses or strapped to their studios, and they were put in situations where they still wanted to create something, but because of the mood and because of the situation, right? Maybe they felt like they didn't have their typical artistic inspiration.
I remember during COVID that a lot of my relief came through music. I remember blasting out to different kinds of music. I began to understand how music could change the very nature of how I felt. Even for a time, you can look back throughout history and realize how important music and the arts and what they can actually do, and how they end up offering pieces of hope. At least something there for us to latch on to.
There is a sort of non-attachment in the arts that I think that is healthy.
That's very interesting. I love that.
Because it's the process. Yeah. And I'm not trying to create something all the time for external validation. There's plenty of that. But ultimately, to me, an artist is someone who is creative and expressive, and they are in the present moment with that.
During the pandemic, pandemic, I think one of the hardest things that everyone has had to deal with is the mental health issues, right? The depression, the wanting to be somewhere else, right? The wanting to do something else, the wanting to be with somebody else, and all that.
When we are confronted with isolation, we either fight or we flight, because we don't realize that isolation is actually a conflict. We think of conflict being something that someone comes at us with a weapon or something else, but the reality is, in our minds, isolation is a sometimes deadly conflict in which we've got to be able to deal. So we're either going to flight, we're going to move away from it, or we're going to fight it, and fight it not necessarily in a negative way. We want to have the right kind of tools.
The sense of community is so needed. Humans are not meant to be alone. Even if you're the largest introvert, social interaction is still important, because it gives you that comfort that you're not in it by yourself. There's others who do understand and that want to help you.
As a college professor, there have been a lot of requests during the pandemic for accommodations, right? People asking for special consideration because of difficulties they're having. And in some cases, of course, this is because they've been ill. But in a lot of cases, it's simply because they've been overwhelmed by situations. The Black Lives Matter protests, that was big where I am in Louisville, Kentucky. And so that was happening just right alongside the pandemic beginning. And so a lot of people also found themselves asking for accommodations because of that, because they were exhausted because of issues surrounding that. And of course, one of the conversations that's been coming up a lot is, what do you do with the vulnerable, and who are the vulnerable?
I think the advantage of COVID, if there can be some advantages of COVID, as you mentioned, is that it opened the door for us to have that conversation about that. I think in the past, there's been a fear that if you talk about suicide, that students will think about committing suicide. And that's just not the case. Students don't think, well, I haven't been thinking about suicide, but now that you mention it, let me commit. That's not a thing. But our fear is that if we talk about that openly or have that conversation about it, that will get a student to think about harming themselves. And that's not the case. Rather, what it does, it creates a student who is thinking about that to know there's somebody who cares for me, and I have an outlet. I can process that with people and do that.
Masculinity is not gendered. Masculinity does not mean strength. To me, masculinity means in touch with the full realm of who I am as a person.
Yes.
And that masculinity is part of that. My decisiveness, my creativity, my assertiveness, those are typically masculine traits.
If you identify as a male, there are some societal norms that say that you're strong, and to be strong means you don't admit weakness or discomfort or vulnerability is somehow seen as a weakness.
There's this social identity that they're supposed to be strong. This tradition of what a man is supposed to be, he's supposed to be a protector. So if he's supposed to protect, he can't show that weakness. I opine that men suffer very much from the lack of friendship that this linear thinking society that we have says that they cannot have.
I feel like men are this is such a generalization, but we are too disconnected from our feelings. We're too disconnected from the granular nature of emotions. Oh, I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry. Well, what does that really mean? And then, are we introspective enough to say, okay, why is this emotion here?
Since the beginning, our species developed many survival traits that allowed us to avoid unnecessary danger, to reflect and think before we acted, to create and deeply sense the mood of our environments. It has since been called high sensitivity. The sensitive man rising. Watch and find out why.
This is great. Well, thank you for thinking of us.
Well, I am so glad that you guys are here today, and thank you so much for joining us. We're the nonprofit Waltz, and I've known Tracy for a long time, and I've got to spend time with you now, Will, and I'm so excited about the movie, Sensitive Men Rising, and also just all the work that's going to come from that. Something that we do, which is, I think, when my son died, we wanted to create a nonprofit, or create a movement of change. But we were like, well, how do we do that? There's so many other nonprofits out there, and they're good, right? But we were thinking that was one of the things we did is like integrate the visual and performing arts, because one of our things we say is let's stop dancing around mental health conversations. So, we're trying to get people talking more. And something that I think that your film is going to do as well is get people talking more about the highly sensitive person. He was so smart, and we had a very really great relationship and things. But this is why we wanted to start something, was because there's so many beautiful people out there that are struggling. And I feel like if we can get information out to them as far as even mental health conditions, but also just even things like being a highly sensitive person or being in a relationship with a highly sensitive person and how you can help them. I can ask you a few questions.
That's good.
I guess that's
But
what
I can, based on what you said and the way I know Tracy probably, I hope he'll agree with this, but I think so, because I'm going to put him on the spot, is that we're going to do a special dedication in our film at the end of it or at the beginning of it or something like that. And one of the people that we dedicate this film to is going to be your son. We're going to put him in, okay?
Oh, really? Thank you.
Oh, really? Because he sounds like he's a great person, and you're a great mother, and what you've done and what you say, people like him is who we want to be a part of this this whole, maybe the wrong word, but movement or awareness. We want him to be recognized. So and you'll be in the film. You already know that. So that's something. Tracy, are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely okay with it. Yeah, we need to shine a light on it, right, and bring mental health to the forefront and make it stigma-free.
That's wonderful. I didn't expect that. Yeah, that's wonderful. He was just a beautiful human being. He was.
Gentle souls, feel the pain. Strength gave out the other day, lost and wandering through the haze. What if guilt could wash it all away? I didn't know, I missed the signs. It's all my fault, man, I was blind, closed eyes, distracted mind. But is that true, or all alive. Thought I could grieve, fall apart, walk away, let the rhythm of life fill the mind, heart, and days. But the purpose keeps calling. Yeah, that's the way. If you believe in tomorrow, you gotta live for today. Billion questions, all ask why. I could have saved, could have helped, could have fixed. It's not fair. Some disease sneaks into the mind, but he's not past, he is now. Lives on in our lives. Thought I could breathe, fall apart, walk away, let the rhythm of life fill the mind, heart, and days. But the purpose keeps calling. Yeah, that's the way. You believe in tomorrow, you gotta live for today. There's no room for guilt in a heart filled with love, strength enough to be the gentle touch, power of hope, power of kind, power to feel, dance the dance, share the strength, and we'll heal. Thought I could grieve, fall apart, walk away, let the rhythm of life fill the mind, heart, and days. But the purpose keeps calling. Yeah, that's the way. If you believe in tomorrow, you gotta live for today. Gentle souls, feel the pain.